أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونشكره ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي السلام عليكم. It's quite an honor to be here tonight with my Boston family. It's incredible how much crossover there is between New Jersey and Boston, those who have lived in New Jersey, who have come to Boston, those who have lived in Boston and have come to New Jersey. I'm not quite sure why. You have such a vibrant and beautiful community here. But honestly, I'm very humbled to stand here in the place where Imam Siraj Wahaj, our beloved teacher and leader, has stood just a few minutes before. And I told Sister Salma earlier today that in Ramadan in particular, I'm very selective about where I travel to. It's hard for me to leave my 3 children, my husband, my family, and travel. But when there are causes that really speak to me, I feel that it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow me to be a part of something that can benefit the ummah, that can benefit communities, that can benefit generations to come. And when my staff told me about the invitation to join you here in this program, I immediately said yes. Because education is the key that will transform our generations. When we think of education as being a typical classroom, when we think of education as being books or online learning, that's not the type of education I'm speaking of. Yes, the Boston Islamic Seminary will offer that structure, it will offer that type of learning, but it will offer something more. It will offer a learning that truly will transform hearts and minds, and that's the type of education we need. You know, I've shared a story about a situation that impacted me greatly in many different talks and programs, but I've never had the chance to share it with Imam Siraj Wahaj in the room. And it's a story that really ties back to the Imam and how he, as a teacher, as an educated, transformed my life and the lives of many others. When I was younger, you know, growing up in New Jersey, I'm a Jersey girl through and through all my life. I grew up actually with Sheikh Yasir Fahmi, your Sheikh here with Dalia. The father of Yasir Fahmi was actually my teacher as I was growing up. And we used to go to a masjid that was about an hour away from our home. And Imam Siraj is probably familiar with the Al-Ghazali school and Sheikh Hanuti and that masjid that was the core for many of us youth in New Jersey. And every Sunday, my mom would tell us, it's time to go to the masjid, it's time to go to Sunday school. And my sisters and I would moan and groan, and no, Mom, you know, it's Sunday, we just want to watch TV, we have an essay to do, you know. And my mom would always say, get in the car, we're going to the masjid. There was a particular Sunday, quite some time ago, it was the 90s, I'm giving away my age now, but I remember my mom woke us up and she said, it's time to go to the masjid. And I remember that day in particular, I didn't want to go. I just felt like there was a lot of other things going on in life. I didn't feel connected to my masjid. It was a beautiful masjid, but it was a place where the women's area was always cold and damp. It was a beautiful masjid, but it was a place where the imams all spoke in Arabic. It was a beautiful masjid, but I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel a connection. I didn't feel like I could receive an education there that I could understand. So that particular Sunday, my mother loaded us up into the old station wagon, and, you know, moaning and groaning, we headed to the masjid. And we sat in the back, and I remember Sheikh Yasir, if he was here, he would probably remember this too. He was little, so he was running around in the masjid, and I sat next to his sister Dalia, my close friend. And we sat there kind of, you know, chatting about our week, about school. And the imam of the masjid said, I have a special announcement. For the first time, we are going to have a guest imam who is going to give the Sunday lecture in English. And we all said, you know, we were astounded, really? We were going to listen to an imam speak in English. We didn't even know that existed at the time. And so we sat there, kind of shivering together in the cold area of the masjid in the women's section. And this man entered, and he was wearing all white, and he had a white kufi on his head, and his face was glowing with nur. And he began speaking, and he spoke to us about trials, about tribulations. He spoke to us about difficulties that we may face in our lives, difficulties that maybe we sometimes wouldn't understand. And I remember that in that talk, he taught us the dua of Salama, Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa khlif li khayran min. And at the time, I didn't truly understand the words with my rusty Arabic. I didn't truly understand what this Imam was speaking of, but it touched me. And I remember that I began to cry. And I turned to my friend Dalia, and I said, "Who is he?" And she said, "That's Imam Siraj. He's from the masjid in New York." And I said, "His words were so beautiful." And she told me he just buried his daughter recently. And I didn't know Imam. I didn't know his daughter. But I went home that night and I cried a lot. And the years fast forwarded, and I began to seek out information, to try to understand who Salama was. What was her tragedy that this dua was something that helped her through it? Who was the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam? A seed was planted that day. Now we fast forward many, many years. Of course, life carries us off, college and marriage, and we become occupied with the dunya that surrounds us. And I was always a type A planner, and I kind of had my journey planned out. I would finish my bachelor's, marry my husband, who I met my freshman year in Arabic class in college. I was on track. I'd start my master's, we'd have our first child, I'd finish my PhD. My journey, I thought, was set. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to test us early on in our marriage. I conceived, but I miscarried. I conceived, but I miscarried. And with every loss, I began to seek out the deen more and more. I wanted to understand. I wanted to reflect. I wanted to feel a spiritual connection. It wasn't until my third pregnancy when I carried to term, and my husband and I were very excited. We began to pick out the crib and baby outfits. And I went into labor, and I delivered my daughter, Jannah. But the day that she was born was also the day that we buried her. And as my body shook with fever, and I knew that my mother was sitting next to me reading Quran and Ad'iyah, the only dua that I kept hearing over and over again through the haze of my fever was the dua of Salama. And I kept hearing it in the voice of Imam Siraj. Allahumma ajirni fi musibati wa khlif li khayran min. And in that moment, after suffering difficulty, I knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had introduced me to Imam Siraj 20 years before, because I needed him at that time. I needed that education. I needed that moment of learning. I needed to learn those words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had inspired him to share that day, because I needed that education. Now, as we grew as a family, and alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with 3 beautiful children, life continued. And again, we get swept away with our day-to-day, with our journeys, with the people we meet, with the institutions we engage in. Now, as I grew as a mother, and then as my children grew, it was very difficult for me to leave them. And even as I embarked on the journey of teaching concepts of counseling and communication and ideas in my field, I still had difficulty traveling far from my children. Last year, I received a call from a brother in Texas, and he said to me, "I need you to travel out to Jordan to work with some of the orphans and the refugee children there." And I remember, normally I would always say no to any international travel. But in that moment, I said yes. And I said, yes, I'll go. And I remember as I stood in the airport and said salam to my children and my husband, I kept wondering, are they going to be okay? What if my children need me? But my husband, alhamdulillah, who was very supportive, kept pushing me towards the gate, saying, go, go, this is where you need to be. And so when we landed in Jordan, we went immediately to work in some of the camps and the refugee camps, working with the orphans. And I met a little girl named Huda, who was about 4 or 5 years old. And she had this little pink plastic tiara on her head. And she connected with me right away, and she held onto my hand, and we played together. And she had another friend with her, but her friend was very silent. She didn't speak. And I asked Huda, why doesn't your friend speak? And she said to me, because she has seen her parents killed in front of her, and since then she hasn't spoken. And as the days continued, when I played with Huda and I played with her friend, I asked Huda what her friend's name was. And she said her name was Jannah. As it came time for us to leave, I gave Huda and Jannah some final hugs. And I told Jannah that I had to leave and Huda that I had to leave. And they both looked at me. And Huda turned and said, okay, but can we call you Mama because we don't have a mom? And to me, that was a moment of transformation. To me, that was a moment of education, a moment where sometimes we look around and we question, where do we need to be? Where should we be? What should we be doing? What am I called to do? But when I look around this room, I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed each and every one of you in this room tonight for a reason. Has placed each and every one of you in this room tonight maybe as the answer to someone's dua. Has placed each and every one of you in this room tonight to be part of this beautiful journey of building a seminary that will educate people. And imagine how the words of one educator could change the life of so many. And imagine how beautiful it is to be part of that journey. So I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you who are here tonight and allow us to continue to be a part of this beautiful journey of the Boston Islamic Seminary. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and protect all of our teachers who have humbly and beautifully changed our hearts even at times that they don't realize. Jazakum Allahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum.